What's going on, YouTube? My name is Tom. Welcome to the Nerd Cave, and today we are going to be going over perhaps the most important step in learning how to solve a Rubik's Cube, which is understanding the notation. Ooh. Okay, so before we get started with notation, we should probably just go over some pretty basic stuff. The Rubik's Cube is a cube, so that implies that there are 6 sides, and indeed there are. And you can always tell which side, which color a side is by looking at the centerpiece, because no matter how you turn the cube, that centerpiece will always stay the same. So this is the red side, this is the white side, this is the blue side, etc. Now that we got the basic stuff out of the way, it's time to start going over what notation actually is in Rubik's Cube terms. Notation in Rubik's Cubing is just 6 letters, and these 6 letters can either be U, R, L, F, D, or B. As you could probably already tell, a letter stands for a face of the Rubik's Cube. So the red side right now is the F face, because it is the front face, as you could see. So if I were to say F, you would turn the front face clockwise. If I was to say R, we'd be dealing with the right face, and you would turn the right side clockwise. Clockwise as though you're facing it. This is where it starts to get a little bit confusing, but it's really, once you understand it, you won't even think about it. If I was to say L, you would turn the left face clockwise as though you're facing it. Now, a lot of beginners, they see this is R, and they think this is L, but it's not, because we just turned the left face counterclockwise. Because it has to be clockwise as though we're facing it, so L actually looks like this. A little confusing at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's not even going to be a problem. If I was to say D, we'd be dealing with the down layer, and if I were to say D in an algorithm, you would turn the down layer clockwise. That is counterclockwise, as you could see. If I was to say U, you would turn the up face clockwise. And so on and so on. And B is not really something you're going to be worrying about because we don't use B at all in the beginner's method, but that is, of course, the back side. Now, if you see any one of these letters, it means to turn that face clockwise. So if you see an R, that means to turn the right face clockwise, as though we're facing it. If you see L, that means to turn the left face clockwise, as though we're facing it. Front or F looks like this, turn the front face clockwise, U looks like that, etc., etc. You get the point. Now, if you see any one of these letters with an apostrophe after it, that means to turn whatever face it's referring to counterclockwise. And an apostrophe, when you're talking about Rubik's Cube algorithms, is pronounced as prime. So if this is R, R prime looks like this, counterclockwise. F prime looks like this, F looks like that. L prime is that way, counterclockwise, which is what confuses a lot of beginners because this is R and this is L prime. But what really helps is if you just kind of angle the cube to where you can kind of see whatever face you're turning, and if you see like L, you know it's this way, L prime is this way, so on and so on. And then there's D, and then there's D prime, U, and U prime. It's just that simple. Now these different letters in a group with each other is called an algorithm. Now I know that sounds very fancy and intimidating, but it really isn't all that intimidating at all. An algorithm is any set of moves or twists and turns that move pieces to where you want them to go to further along the solving process. An algorithm can only be 4 moves sometimes. Like one really fun algorithm that I use to warm up my fingers is R, U, R prime, U prime. And a fun fact, if you start that algorithm on a solved cube and you do it 6 times, the cube will resolve itself. So we did it once just there. Let's do it again. R, U, R prime, U prime. That was 2. R, U, R prime, U prime. 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 That was 6 times, and the cube has solved itself. That about wraps up notation. If you think it'll be helpful to watch this video a few times to try to understand it, then I recommend doing that. That's what I had to do when I first started because it was a little confusing to me. But the more you practice it and the more you try to get notation down, the easier it's going to be to solve your first Rubik's Cube. Make sure to stay tuned for next week's video, which is going to deal with the well, I guess you could call notation the very first step, but the very first step in the actual solving process, which is building the cross. This is step number 1 in the beginner's method of learning how to solve a Rubik's Cube, and next week I'm going to teach you how to do it. Thanks for watching.